The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Helen Miller from Ohio EPA. We'll be starting our presentation in approximately 1 minute as we still have some folks logging on. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Ohio EPA's Scrap Tire Regulations and Infrastructure Program. My name's Helen Miller with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA, and I will be moderating this afternoon's presentation with Ohio EPA's Channon Cohen from our Division of Materials and Waste Management. On this slide, you see an example screenshot of your attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop on the right-hand side of your screen. For this presentation, you're listening in using your computer audio. If you're having sound issues or if the slides stop advancing, please try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. If you continue to have issues, please let us know in the Q&A pane, and one of our behind-the-scenes team members will try to assist you. Please feel free to submit questions to the presenter by clicking on the question mark icon and typing them into the questions pane on your attendee interface. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation. We'll try our best to answer questions as they come in and during the Q&A portion. If we don't answer your question during Q&A, we will reach out to you via email following today's webinar. You can also click on the document icon on your attendee interface to view included handouts. One of those handouts includes a PDF file of the PowerPoint slides used for today's presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email along with the survey. The survey will also appear once this webinar ends. We value your feedback, and we greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be emailed to you after the session. In the email, you can download it. This webinar is approved for 1 hour of registered environmental health specialist or environmental health specialist in training credit. To receive credit for attending, please provide your REHS or EHSIT number in the post-webinar survey, so Ohio EPA could submit on your behalf to the Ohio Department of Health. If you're seeking other CEUs, see our related fact sheet included as a handout to this afternoon's session. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Channon.
Thanks so much, Helen, for that introduction. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for attending this webinar. My goal is for you to leave this webinar understanding the comprehensive program Ohio EPA has in place to manage scrap tires, learn what resources the Division of Materials and Waste Management has to educate about proper scrap tire management, make you aware of the grants available through Ohio EPA to support proper scrap tire management, and plant the seed for you to become interested in learning more about the potential scrap tires have to be repurposed. For example, on this intro slide, I am showing some tire mulch in a landscaping application. Sorry about that. Okay, what I will cover today is why the scrap tire program was created, the scrap tire management infrastructure or system for managing scrap tires that Ohio EPA has in place, the chapters of Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Code applicable to the scrap tire program, the compliance assistance and resources available to aid in achieving proper scrap tire management that DMWIM has developed, and grant opportunities related to the scrap tire program. So let's talk about why the scrap tire program was created. In 1987, Ohio, like all other states, was struggling with numerous piles of dumped scrap tires and no regulatory framework in place to require proper scrap tire management. To better understand the problem, Ohio EPA worked with the consulting company, Burgess and Nyepel, to conduct a statewide survey of tire generators and recyclers and to find out what was going on. Burgess and Nyepel's findings were placed in a report that basically found almost half of all tires generated at that time were unaccounted for and presumably open dumped or otherwise improperly disposed of. Culminating in 1988, scrap tires added to the multitude of solid waste management problems that Ohio was facing, such as a fear of declining landfill capacity and new landfill permitting requirements from US EPA, to name a couple. As a result, House Bill 592 was passed in 1988. This bill revised Ohio's solid waste regulatory program and specifically called out scrap tires as we know them today as a solid waste. House Bill 592 also required the adoption of a state solid waste management plan, which occurred approximately a year later. This state plan provided recommendation for a comprehensive scrap tire regulatory program, enabling Ohio to finally meet many of the objectives for scrap tire management laid out in the 1989 State Solid Waste Management Plan. Senate Bill 165 was passed in 1993. Senate Bill 165 created scrap tire laws found in Ohio Revised Code sections 373470 through 373490, granted Ohio EPA rulemaking authority, and established the Scrap Tire Management Fund. With this rulemaking authority, the first scrap tire rules were promulgated in the Ohio Administrative Code in 1996. Established under Senate Bill 165, the Scrap Tire Management Fund was set up to administer the scrap tire regulatory program, abate dumped scrap tires, and award grants to assist in the development of the scrap tire markets. The original fee was collected to support these objectives, and it was 50 cents on the sale of every new tire at the wholesale level. In 2001, the fee was increased by Ohio's General Assembly to $1 per tire to increase the resources available to clean up scrap tire dumps. In July 2011, the fee remained at $1, but 50 cents of it was reallocated to fund the Soil and Water Conservation District's Assistance Fund. Okay, you're probably thinking, I keep hearing about scrap tires. What actually is a scrap tire? That is a great question because it differs from state to state. Some states actually call them waste tires. In Ohio, a scrap tire is a solid waste. A scrap tire is an unwanted or discarded tire. The definition goes on to call it a tire that's been removed from original purpose. Scrap tire includes whole scrap tires and recognizable pieces of scrap. And it includes a used tire. Some states do not include used tires in their definition for a scrap tire or waste tire, but Ohio does. A great rule of thumb is a scrap tire is a tire that is no longer mounted to the car or hub. The decision that the scrap tire is unwanted is typically made by the person that is having the tire uninstalled from the vehicle, often the original purchaser of the new tire. A discarded tire is true to the meaning of discard. The tire has been thrown away. There are circumstances when a tire that has never been installed on a vehicle is deemed a scrap tire. For example, when a manufactured tire is defective. Please feel free to reach out to Ohio EPA when it is not clear-cut. What is not a scrap tire in Ohio? Retreaded, regrooved tires are not scrap tires any longer. Tires from non-motorized vehicles and small equipment like bicycles or lawnmowers or wheelbarrows are not considered scrap tires. Non-pneumatic hard-pressed tires are not scrap tires. Labeled or marketed retreadable casings at a retreading business are not considered scrap tires. And then tire-derived fuel or tire-derived chip, which are shreds that are less than 4 inches in any dimension, that are leaving a recovery facility and are leaving to be used in a fuel application or to meet an authorized beneficial use are not considered scrap tires. Let's take a quick poll. Poll question number 1. Which of the following discarded items are considered a scrap tire in the Ohio Administrative Code? A, bicycle tire. B, lawnmower tire. C, forklift tire, non-pneumatic. D, all of the above. E, none of the above. Choose one answer.
Okay, I have launched the poll, so please make your selection. And it looks like many people have already made their selection. If you have not, please go ahead and make your selection. We'll wrap up the poll. Okay, and Shannon, I am sharing the results.
Wonderful. It looks like most people got it right at 64%. None of the examples are scrap tires. Okay, wonderful. Okay, now you may be thinking, oops, sorry. Now you may be thinking scrap tires are just another solid waste. So why do they need their own set of regulations? Well, I am glad that you want to know the answer to that question so I can answer it. A great number of scrap tires are generated annually. The rule of thumb is that one tire is generated per person per year. If Ohio's population is approximately 12 million people, then the assumption is that about 12 million scrap tires are generated every year. That is enough scrap tires to fill 56 American football fields to the crossbar. Scrap tires were banned from being disposed of in landfills in 1993. The ban is more like a ban that says where scrap tires can go. For example, the revised code just says tires must go to recovery, storage, monofill, monocell, or other approved facilities or beneficial uses. Similarly, in the Ohio Administrative Code, the rule explains when scrap tires can go into the landfill. The exceptions for when scrap tires can go into a landfill include if the tires are burned or partially burned, if it's a scrap tire byproduct and residual from a scrap tire recovery facility, or if it's whole tires that cannot be processed by a scrap tire recovery facility. This includes, but is not limited to, aircraft tires and forklift tires that are not processable due to their construction, or scrap tires contaminated with mud or other materials like stones that render the tires unsuitable for processing. The reason for the limited disposal options for tires has a lot to do with the material that they are made out of and their shape. Tires are manufactured to last, which is a good thing when they're on your car, but not so great in a landfill. Tires have about 75% void space, which makes them bulky and difficult to compact in a mixed waste environment. And that donut shape has the potential to trap methane. The design of tires provides an ideal nursery for mosquito larvae. Tires fill with water after a rainstorm and retain the water. Tires have insulated properties and retain heat for long periods of time that speeds up mosquito egg hatching and larval growth. They also collect organic debris that provides nutrition for the developing larvae. And we all know that we do not want a bunch of mosquitoes around since they can transmit diseases such as West Nile virus and Eastern equine encephalitis, to name a couple. And as with most diseases, the young and the old are more likely to develop a severe illness if they do contract one of these diseases. In addition to mosquitoes, and just as problematic, is a tire fire. I'm just going to touch on the highlights today since I'm certainly no expert on tire fires. There are a lot of great publications available, some very old publications from the US EPA, and older, more recent publications available through the US Fire Administration. But there are three main issues with tire fires. They are difficult to extinguish. Normal methods for putting out fires, such as water and foam, are ineffective. Tire fires are often put out through smothering with dirt, but it can take days into months for the tire fire to burn out because they tend to smolder. Requires a lot of resources to put them out and to contain them. Heavy equipment is often needed to separate piles of tires from each other, or heavy equipment is used to place scrap tires in portable containers. It's used to build berms that separate tire piles and contain contaminants. It requires a lot of manpower. Often multiple fire departments are used, and it requires a lot of water, foam, and possibly dirt. Tire fires produce a lot of hazards to human health and the environment. The smoke produced during a tire fire contains a lot of organic compounds that can contribute to the production of bad ozone, causing breathing problems. And smoke also contains solid particles called particulate matter that increase health risk. Similar to the smoke, the runoff from the tire fire is composed of many organic compounds and also contains heavy metals and petroleum hydrocarbons, which can be dangerous to human health and the environment. On average, every passenger tire produces 2 gallons of pyrolytic oil that can run into a neighboring stream or contaminate soil. Ash is made up of organic compounds, heavy metals, dioxins, and furans. All these adversely affect human health and the environment. Ash can contaminate soils, affect its pH, nutrient levels, and change the physical properties of the soil. Does anyone know the name of the famous tire fire in Ohio? You got it, the Kirby Tire Fire. Effectively fighting a tire fire may require a lot of resources in time, money, people, and equipment. An extreme example of this would be the Kirby Tire Fire that was set in 1999. This is Ohio's largest tire fire, and to put out the visible flames of smoke, it took 5 days, approximately 25 local fire departments, which is over 200 firefighters, the Ohio Air National Guard, and numerous local heavy equipment operators and dump truck drivers. It cost the state, federal, and local agencies $2.3 million during the initial fire, and then Ohio EPA $18.3 million to deal with the fire residuals and contaminated surface water. Altogether, the complete project, including removal of the unburnt tires, cost $32 million. Okay, let's take a quick poll. What are the 2 main health threats from improperly stored scrap tires? A, fire. B, mosquitoes. C, toxins. D, A and B. E, all of the above. Choose one answer.
Okay, I have launched the poll, so go ahead and make your selection. And it looks like most have made their selection. If you have not, go ahead and make your selection so we can wrap up the poll. Okay, I am sharing the results, Shannon.
Okay, it's looking like most people know the answer, 56%, but then E, all of the above. Maybe. The answer is D. I can see E. Oh, okay. Make sure I got this right. All right. Okay. So we generate at least 12 million scrap tires a year. Scrap tires are great breeding environments for mosquitoes that can carry life-threatening diseases, and tire fires are harmful to human and animal health and devastating to the environment. On the other hand, scrap tires are a waste that is very durable and has a lot of great properties that gives it a lot of potential to be repurposed. The desire to incorporate all of these factors into a regulatory framework has led to the development of a comprehensive scrap tire management infrastructure in Ohio. The scrap tire management infrastructure or framework for proper scrap tire management that has been developed for Ohio consists of several types of tire facilities: collection, storage, recovery, monocell, and monofill. Also includes scrap tire generating businesses, regulation of the transportation of scrap tires, beneficial use, remediation, and market development. The present scrap tire management infrastructure that DMWIM and its health department partners regulate includes 7 licensed scrap tire collection facilities, 11 licensed scrap tire recovery facilities, 1 scrap tire monofill facility, a minimum of 5,000 scrap tire generating businesses, estimated based on standard industrial classification codes, 17 pre-authorized beneficial uses in rule, 32 director authorized beneficial use sites since 2001, approximately 1,475 scrap tire removal sites, and 99 registered scrap tire transporters. The simplest scrap tire facility is a scrap tire collection facility. This facility is open to the public and limited to an aggregate volume of 5,000 cubic feet. A good way to think of the amount of scrap tires that can be stored by a collection facility is to think of the amount of scrap tires that can be placed on a 53-foot semi-truck trailer. These trailers have a volume range of 4,000 to 4,500 cubic feet. It can hold a maximum of 1,600 laced scrap tires. All scrap tires must be stored in portable containers at a collection facility, and the owner-operator has to obtain a registration certificate to establish the facility and a license to operate it. There are 2 classifications of storage facilities. Class 1 is the larger. It's allowed to store up to 3 acres of effective scrap tire storage area, which is about 678,000 passenger tires. That's approximately 3 American football fields full of scrap tires filled up to the crossbars. The Class 1 is issued a permit to install. Now, one condition of having a permit to install for a Class 1 storage facility is that PTI can only be issued to owners or operators which are also the owners or operators of a licensed scrap tire recovery facility, monofill, or monocell located in Ohio, or an equivalent solid waste facility located in another state. The whole purpose for this is you don't want to have approximately 700,000 tires just sitting somewhere without an outlet. The Class 2 is the smaller of the storage facilities, and it's limited to a maximum of 10,000 square feet of effective scrap tire storage area, which is about 52,000 passenger tires, or about 1/4 of an American football field filled up to the crossbars with scrap tires. The Class 2 is issued a registration certificate. Neither one of these types of storage facilities have to be open to the public. They can only accept whole scrap tires, and they're required to obtain financial assurance to operate. The amount of financial assurance obtained is based on the amount of whole tires approved for storage. It is important to mention that except for the scrap tire collection facility, Excuse me, 1 second, my light turned off. Okay, there we go. Ohio EPA requires all scrap tire facilities for which the closure cost estimate exceeds $5,500 to obtain financial assurance. This money is used in the event that a facility has to be closed. We presently do not have any storage facilities in Ohio. The recovery facility is the only facility that is allowed to turn scrap tires into a product. There are two classifications for stationary recovery facilities. The Class 1 facility is allowed to accept up to 200 tons of tires through its gate every day. In other words, that's the definition for the daily design input capacity, the amount of tires you're allowed to bring through your facility in a day. For the Class 1, 200 tons and up is what is allowed. The Class 1 is issued a permit to install. Now the Class 2 is a lot smaller, and the daily design input capacity cannot exceed 199 tons per day. In other words, Class 2 cannot accept more than 199 tons of scrap tires through its gate on a daily basis. Class 2 is issued a registration certificate. Both are required to operate under a license. Ohio EPA also regulates the mobile scrap tire recovery facility, which is a type of scrap tire recovery facility consisting of portable equipment that is designed by the manufacturer for regular movement from one site to another and is used for processing tires into a usable product. Similar to the Class 2, the owner or operator of a mobile scrap tire recovery facility is required to obtain a registration certificate to establish the facility. It too is licensed. Stationary Class 1 and Class 2 facilities are allowed to operate mobile equipment too. Each classification has storage limits. The Class 1 facility is allowed to store up to 20,000 square feet of whole, cut, or baled scrap tires, including rough shreds. A rough shred is a tire shred that is greater than 4 inches in any dimension. The Class 2 is only allowed to store 10,000 square feet of whole, cut, or baled scrap tires, including rough shreds. The Class 1 is allowed to store up to 20,000 square feet of tire-derived chip or tire-derived fuel. The Class 2 is only allowed to store up to 2,000 square feet. Class 1 is allowed to store up to 20,000 square feet of scrap tire byproducts and residuals from scrap tires. All component parts, assembled products made from scrap tires, for example, pavers or ballistic tiles, and other processed scrap tire products other than tire-derived fuel and tire-derived chip. The Class 2 is only allowed to store 10,000 square feet of this amount of materials and waste. Scrap tire recovery facilities are required to have financial assurance, which is calculated based on the amount of stored whole scrap tires, scrap tire shreds, other processed products, scrap tire byproducts, and residuals approved for storage. Mobile recovery facilities are required to obtain financial assurance too. Also, stationary recovery facilities are required to obtain additional financial assurance if they operate mobile equipment. Reported to Ohio EPA by its 11 scrap tire recovery facilities, the number one use for their products in Ohio right now is the use of scrap tires in civil engineering applications, such as an aggregate substitute in the drainage layer of landfills, backfill around building foundations, mostly homes, and as an aggregate base for building on weak soils. Until 2022, tire-derived fuel was the second top product. However, Ohio is following the national trend in experiencing a reduction in the use of tire-derived fuel as a fuel source. 2022 reports indicate an explosion in the production of tire-derived mulch used in landscaping and on playgrounds and equestrian surfacing. We have two facilities in Ohio that make crumb rubber. Crumb rubber is often used for playground mulch, put in rubberized asphalt applications, and in synthetic turf fill. Crumb rubber can resemble tire nuggets, granules, and be reduced down to a rubber powder. Ohio regulates two types of scrap tire disposal facilities. The first is a scrap tire monocell, which is a dedicated cell in a sanitary waste landfill or an industrial and manufacturing waste landfill. The second is a scrap tire monofill. It's a dedicated landfill that is only allowed to accept and dispose of scrap tires. Both have to be issued a permit to install to be established. Both facilities have to be licensed to be operated. And scrap tires have to be shredded prior to disposal unless the tire has a bead width of at least 14 inches or larger and a rim or wheel diameter of at least 24 inches or larger. There are no remaining scrap tire monocells in Ohio. Ohio does have one scrap tire monofill located in Stark County. With a minimum of 5,000, the largest portion of the scrap tire management infrastructure are the scrap tire generating businesses. These types of businesses include tire retailers, retreaders, motor vehicle salvage dealers, and junkyards. While they're not required to become a licensed scrap tire facility, Ohio EPA does limit the amount of scrap tires they can store, and they have to perform mosquito control through either keeping the stored scrap tires dry or applying a pesticide. They are also required to secure the scrap tires at their place of business. In other words, take measures such as fencing in, cabling, using security cameras, for example, to try to keep their scrap tires from being removed from their property. Ohio EPA regulates the beneficial use of scrap tires. There are presently 17 pre-authorized uses for scrap tires in rule. In choosing the uses in rule, over the years, we have tried to improve the list by including uses that repurpose the design properties found in tires. Most pre-authorized uses are held to standards published by the American Society for Testing and Materials. For uses not pre-authorized, an application has to be submitted and the project has to be approved by the director. Here, the slide shows one of the latest pre-authorized uses, which is using tire-derived cylinders that perform as an aggregate confining system in roads, driveways, or parking lots. Now you might wonder, what is so great about a scrap tire? Well, think about all the engineering that went into producing that tire that transports your vehicle 20,000 to 50,000 miles over all types of roads, dirt, gravel, and paved, without losing air, warping, withstanding the constant heat created by road friction, and that carries at minimum a 2-ton vehicle. This is a highly engineered product. Some of these design properties can be transferred as a material substitute in many civil engineering applications and products. This slide lists some of the best utilized properties. For example, lightweight. Tire-derived aggregate is 1/3 the weight of soil, which is helpful when constructing on weak, compressible soils that lack the bearing soil capacity needed for the structure. Or how about high permeability and void space? These properties contribute to tire-derived aggregate's capacity to transmit water, which can improve drainage and can result in a fill that will not internally fail in very wet conditions. And then we have the registered scrap tire transporters. Scrap tires are the only solid waste that Ohio regulates the hauling. Ohio EPA regulates the hauling of. In Ohio, no one is allowed to transport more than 10 scrap tires in a vehicle at a time. Now, there are exceptions to this requirement. In fact, our regulations identify 16, so we aren't unreasonable, but they are very specific and most situations are not covered by these exceptions. Let me spend a little time on the registered scrap tire transporters because they run between the scrap tire generating businesses and operations and facilities to make sure tires get to authorized locations. You have to become a registered scrap tire transporter if you want to transport more than 10 scrap tires in a single load. Registered scrap tire transporters are required to register every year after initial registration. When they're using a vehicle to transport tires, they have to make sure that there's an original issued registration certificate in the vehicle. And starting in 2024, they're going to have to affix a decal to their windshield. Registered scrap tire transporters are required to use shipping papers. Registered scrap tire transporters are allowed to shred scrap tires to consolidate loads of scrap tires. They cannot shred scrap tires to make a product. They're required to obtain financial assurance too. So without meeting the 16 exceptions or being a registered scrap tire transporter, transporting more than 10 scrap tires at a time in a single load is a felony in Ohio. If you do not remember anything else from this webinar, please remember, do not transport more than 10 scrap tires in your vehicle at one time. Now, so far in the webinar, we have spent a lot of time explaining most of the scrap tire management infrastructure. We have all these regulations for facilities and businesses and beneficial uses and transporters in place to make sure that scrap tires are managed properly. Ideally, how the system is designed to work is scrap tires are left at a scrap tire generating business or operation. These scrap tires are transported by a registered scrap tire transporter from a scrap tire generating business or operation to a collection, storage, recovery, or disposal facility. Ultimately, the scrap tire ends up at a recovery facility to be processed and repurposed into a product, or ends up at a disposal facility like a monocell or monofill. What really happens? Say when we get that unexpected flat or slow leak, we end up going to the tire shop and buying a new or used tire. We find ourselves with this unexpected expense. And now, on top of the cost of the tire, the shop wants to charge us to leave the tire there. By the way, they're usually charging you to be able to pay a registered scrap tire transporter to take the tire to a recovery facility to have the tire turned into a product. But let me get back to this hypothetical situation. You're thinking, I can find a use for that tire. I just saw someone working out the other day with a tire. I've been meaning to up my workout game. My niece and nephew, they need a tire swing. I just saw how you can make these beautiful tire garden wreaths on Pinterest. But usually, those tires just end up around the house. Or worse, pitched into a river or thrown out the car and on the side of the road. It gets worse. You pay to leave your tire at the shop, and the shop pays someone very little to make the tires disappear. Or someone steals the scrap tires from the shop to resell the good one and throw away the rest. These tires end up in abandoned homes, semi-truck trailers, or found in U-Haul trucks. These tires end up on private properties or public lands. Geez. Someone has to clean them up. You can't just leave them be. Remember, dump scrap tires are a great breeding environment for mosquitoes, and that Kirby tire fire occurred because of arson. It is not good to have piles of scrap tires lying around. Ohio EPA spends typically between $500,000 to $1 million a year cleaning up scrap tires. And we have a dedicated staff person to run the program, so we actually have to add a salary to that mill. But Ohio EPA is not the only government cleaning up scrap tires. Solid waste management districts, health departments, and local governments all clean up dump scrap tires. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this very serious situation and important program because an amazing webinar was provided about this program in 2022, and it is available on the agency's YouTube channel. The webinar is called Waste Sites and Scrap Tires in Your Community. A PDF of this presentation is available in the chat. There are two avenues for Ohio EPA to clean up scrap tires. There is no-fault program and through enforcement. Under the no-fault program, Ohio EPA is able to help private landowners and even local governments that have fallen victim to illegal tire dumping and are often left with scrap tires that need to be removed. Ohio EPA also cleans up scrap tires through enforcement. Enforcement occurs when there is just no other choice and it is generally a slower process because of the steps we are required to take to use the scrap tire funds and the difficulty in getting access to the property where the scrap tires have been dumped. However, it is better to eventually get the tires cleaned up rather than have them stay on a property forever. So ultimately, it is worth it. Now, let me provide a little more information about the no-fault program. When originally created in 1993 by Ohio's scrap tire laws, the no-fault program only allowed state-funded cleanups of small tire piles, 100 to 2,000 tires. But it has now been expanded to clean up to 10,000 scrap tires as long as 6 specific conditions are met. Here are the 6 conditions. Conditions 2 through 6 are fairly straightforward, but let me provide some clarification on condition 1. The first condition can be a bit tricky because there are really 2 different possibilities, and the applicant must meet one possibility to be eligible. Condition 1 reads, tires placed after owner acquired title, or tires placed before owner acquired title by bequest or devise. This second part of condition 1 explains the tires were already on the property and then you inherited the property by bequest or devise. What is bequest or devise? Historically, bequest was used for personal property given by will and devise for real property given by will. Today, the 2 words are used interchangeably. It is very important to explain that often we receive applications for a cleanup from people that have purchased properties where the scrap tires were already there. Just want to mention, if you purchase a property with scrap tires on it, you are not eligible for the free cleanup. I just want to share some remediation stats for fiscal years 2020 through 2023. Let me mention that the state fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th of the previous year. Therefore, state fiscal year 2020, for example, ran from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. While the cost fluctuates, which could be dependent on whether we have to mobilize heavy equipment or how mud packed the scrap tires are, there's an upward trend over the last 4 years. This trend is influenced by providing more cleanups to governments, clearing public lands of scrap tires. Now, I just want to mention that the amount of scrap tires cleaned up is provided in passenger tire equivalent. Passenger tire equivalent is a unit of measurement for converting various scrap tire sizes and processed scrap tires into a standard weight for estimating numbers or volumes of scrap tires. The passenger tire equivalent is based on the weight for an average size passenger and light truck tire. In this presentation, 20 pounds of whole scrap tires equals 1 passenger tire equivalent. A recent change in rule has made the passenger tire equivalent increase to 25 pounds of whole or processed scrap tires. This increase is due to the fact that consumers have been purchasing larger vehicles, such as SUVs and trucks, which uses larger tires that weigh more. It is very important to recognize that Ohio EPA is not able to do this important work alone. To help educate and assist the regulated community about proper scrap tire management and its regulatory obligations, and enforce the scrap tire rules and laws, Ohio EPA depends heavily on our partners: health departments, solid waste management districts, law enforcement, and local courts. Let's take a quick poll. How many scrap tires were remediated for fiscal year 2022? That's July 1st, 2021 through July 30th, 2022. Let's see if you were paying attention. A is 113 tons. B is 527 tons. C is 1,000 tons. And D is 2,977 tons. Choose an answer.
Okay, I have launched the poll, so go ahead and make your selection. And also just a quick reminder, I know some people logged on a little late, but there are, if you go to your documents icon on your screen, you can pull down a PDF copy of today's PowerPoint presentation and also a copy of last year's webinar that Shannon mentioned. And then there's also a fact sheet in there about CEUs. So you can download those. And it looks like most people have made their selection. If you have not, go ahead and please make yours so we can wrap up the poll. Okay, I am sharing the results, Shannon.
Awesome. A lot of people are paying attention. The answer is D, 2,977 tons. We were really working hard fiscal year 2022. All right. Okay. I just want to share the portions of Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Code relevant to the scrap tire program with you. All of the scrap tire laws are contained in Ohio Revised Code Chapter 3734. The sections specifically dedicated to the scrap tire program are sections 3734.770 to 3734.9014. I would specifically like to call out 3734.85, which is the law that allows Ohio EPA to clean up scrap tires, and 3734.901, which allows Ohio EPA to provide scrap tire related grants. Since Chapter 3734 is Ohio EPA's solid waste chapter, there is one other applicable section that I would like to mention. As a solid waste, scrap tires are not allowed to be open burned or open dumped in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3734.03. Since June 30th of this year, the scrap tire rules have been housed in their own chapter, Chapter 3745.580. Previously, the scrap tire rules were housed in with most other solid waste rules in Chapter 3745.27. Please go check out these new rules on our webpage. Now, as you try to navigate these rules, it is important to mention that the applicability rule, which is 3745.580.01 of the Ohio Administrative Code, is really helpful in helping to find the rules that are applicable to the specific piece of the scrap tire management infrastructure of interest. It contains a roadmap to help find the applicable rules. For example, you can see here on the slide, B2 reads that rules 3745.580.200 to 3745.580.225 of the Administrative Code are applicable to an owner or operator of a scrap tire collection facility. So this applicability rule just lays out the entire framework. Here is just a continuation of that rule. And for example, the last piece of infrastructure is covered in B8, again, for the beneficial use. I also want to bring to your attention Ohio Administrative Code Rule 3745.580.04, because it lays out the structure from Ohio Revised Code for how scrap tires have to be managed in Ohio. It is designed so that anyone that generates, possesses, or stores scrap tires can read 580.04 and determine if they are regulated. By now you recognize how complex and extensive the regulations for scrap tires are. To aid in understanding the program, DIMWIM creates compliance assistance tools when possible and educational resources to aid the regulated community in determining whether they're in compliance. Let me give you an example of one of these tools. One common question that DIMWIM receives: how do I get someone to pick up scrap tires for my home or business? To better aid customers seeking this information, we decided to survey our registered scrap tire transporters and create a resource that shares the services based on address that they're willing to offer. Transporters told us how far they're willing to travel, how many scrap tires they can transport, if they can provide portable containers, they live load, and what sectors they can service. This information was placed in a tool that is called the Scrap Tire Pickup and Drop-Off Tool. You can launch this from the Scrap Tire webpage, and once inside the tool, select the tab, I need someone to pick up tires. This tab opens the user into a screen that requires selection of a service type, such as residential, commercial, industrial, or remediation at dumps, and then requires an address to return a list of transporters that may be able to provide the requested service. I want to quickly also tell you about another tool. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Into the Outdoors. It's an education network that targets youths and adults. Into the Outdoors just recently created a video about recycling scrap tires. Yay! To accompany the video, it also created lesson plans for more middle school and high school students. This slide shows everything that the video covers. It's a pretty long video. It's 26 minutes long. And some of the highlights is that it introduces engineering concepts such as lateral load, provides recycling statistics, and then just talks about some of the recycling options for tires. The video can be watched at Into the Outdoors website. Here's the address. Ohio EPA has created guidance documents that explain every piece of the scrap tire management infrastructure. These guidance documents provide basic but important information about how to establish each facility, become a registered scrap tire transporter, the process for getting approval for a scrap tire beneficial use that is not pre-authorized, and the list goes on and on. These guidance documents can be found by going to the Materials and Waste Management page. Once on that page, click on Guides, Manuals, and Forms, see here at the red arrow, and pick the Scrap Tire Guidance tile. Ohio EPA has created forms to aid our regulated community, inspectors, and partners. Some of these forms include daily log forms and inspection checklists, just to name a couple. These forms can be found by going to the Materials and Waste Management page, again to Guides, Manuals, and Forms. Once on the page, click on Guides, pick the Forms tile. Once on the Forms page, pick the tab O through S, where you can pick the Scrap Tire Forms accordion. DIMWM has created several scrap tire palm cards that provide basic but important information that covers what everyone should know about tires, what retailers should know, what transporters should know, community solutions for scrap tire cleanup and removal, which explains the no-fault program for public lands, and are you a victim of scrap tire dumping, which explains the no-fault program for private properties. These are made available for free to our partners like solid waste management districts, health departments, local law enforcement, and local officials upon request. Also available on DIMWM's webpage, Ohio EPA has published annual scrap tire generation values for each county for at least 10 years. These values are based on information reported by our registered scrap tire transporters. We are working on a new report this year that will cover final end uses for Ohio scrap tires, summarize remediation work, and give a list of licensed scrap tire facilities and registered scrap tire transporters. So stay tuned for that. The last thing I'd like to cover is grants. I'd like to make you aware of some scrap tire related grants. These grants are funded from the Scrap Tire Management Fund. Ohio has been providing grant monies to support scrap tire market development since 1993. More than $14 million has been invested in market development grants to develop diverse and sustainable scrap tire markets in Ohio. Presently, Ohio EPA's Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance is the administrator of the grant, but in the past, grant administrators have included the Department of Development and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Presently, $1 million is earmarked to award grants for scrap tire manufacturing and process equipment, often used by our recovery facilities, and scrap tire use in civil engineering or construction projects. Grant awards can be up to $300,000. For more information, please contact Marie Barnett in the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Her contact information is on the slide. There are other avenues to have scrap tires cleaned up other than through the no-fault program or through enforcement. Since its inception, almost $8 million in community litter grants have been awarded to assist local governments to avoid open dumping of litter and scrap tires. Scrap tires can be cleaned up through the Community Litter Management Grant. The two types of grants that are available are litter cleanup events. They're planned events on public properties and volunteers collect trash and tires. And then tire amnesty events, which is an event where residents bring tires to the event. For both of these types of grants, $40,000 is available. Please reach out to Marie Barnett for more information. The Mosquito Control Grant Program is a collaborative effort between Ohio EPA and the Ohio Department of Health, which began in 2016. Funded activities include any activity that reduces the potential for an outbreak of a mosquito-borne disease. They also offer tire amnesty events, and they offer funding to abate scrap tires on properties. Just to mention, for the abatement of scrap tires on properties, that property cannot be under enforcement at Ohio EPA, and it cannot be eligible for the no-fault cleanup. The contact for that program is Jeff Montavon. And the last grant I want to tell you about is a new grant from the Scrap Tire Unit, and I am so excited about it. It is definitely the newest grant, and I'm really pumped about our unit being involved. As the largest part of the scrap tire management infrastructure, Ohio EPA has established a grant to aid our partners in providing more education and outreach to scrap tire generating businesses. This education and outreach grant for scrap tire generating businesses will launch sometime this month. The grant is designed to fund education and outreach activities that will be performed by a solid waste management district or health department. The activities include identifying all the scrap tire generating businesses within a targeted area, say like a city or a township, communication with the local government officials and law enforcement about the education and outreach program that serve within that targeted area. Within that targeted area, all the scrap tire generating businesses will be visited and provided education and outreach. And then follow-up visits will be performed to verify adoption of best practices by those scrap tire generating businesses, which includes securing scrap tires and using a registered scrap tire transporter. Scrap tire generating businesses that recognize adopt these two best practices will be recognized, and the final report will be given to Ohio EPA. So far, our webinar is tentatively slated for August 22nd. Please check our website to just make sure that we're going to have it on that date, but it will be this month. And the maximum amount of money that can be awarded is $20,000 per targeted area. Please feel free to reach out to me for additional information about this opportunity. All these grant opportunities are available on DNWIM's webpage at the grant section. Last thing I want to tell you about is where does the money go? So we've covered a lot of the infrastructure today, a lot about the programs, and I just want to tell you how this money is spent. So for the programs we've covered today, I'm providing a slide that shows how it was funded. For program enforcement and administration, typical costs are about $750,000 a year. For scrap tire remediation projects, $1 million is allocated at the start of every fiscal year. For scrap tire grants, $1 million is allocated at the beginning of every fiscal year. For the mosquito control grant, $800,000 is dedicated or allocated for this program. And for our latest program for education and outreach projects, $200,000 has been allocated for the fiscal year. Here's the contact slide for the scrap tire program. Please feel free to reach out with questions and concerns, and thanks for your attention and interest. Back to you, Helen.
Okay, well, thank you, Shannon. Lots of great information, and I know we're almost at our time, so we did get a lot of questions, and if our behind-the-scenes team did not answer your question during the webinar, they will be following up via email, so keep your eye out for that. But I have selected just 2 questions to put out there to be answered for everyone. We have one: how many tires are recycled in Ohio per year?
I am so glad to share that information with you. So for 2022, we actually recycled 127,196 tons. If we want to kind of transfer that into tire number, that's about 12,700,000 passenger tires.
Wow, that's a lot. That's great. Okay, and then our last question before we wrap up is, do surrounding states have similar requirements for scrap tires?
Surrounding states do. Now, West Virginia actually doesn't have any requirements. Pennsylvania, but all the states around us, Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Indiana, all allow tires to go into their normal landfills. We are the only state that essentially bans them from being in the landfill. Other than West Virginia, all the states around us do have recovery facilities or processing facilities that turn the tires into other products. But we are the most stringent of all the states around us. And as a result, we've had the fortune of having some of the larger companies willing to come to Ohio because they see there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of tires generated, but there are also a lot of opportunities to reuse tires, and we have programs to really support them in that endeavor.
Okay. Well, again, Shannon, thank you for your great presentation, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Once you leave, you will receive a survey. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. A certificate of attendance will also be emailed to you. And as a reminder, CEUs are available for this session. To receive credit for REHS or EHSIT certification hours, please respond to the question about CEUs in the survey when prompted. And before we end for the day, you can check out our upcoming sessions. On August 22nd, we have a webinar navigating EPA's e-business center. And then on October 12th, NPDES permitting proposed rules and policies. And then actually in September, we have our virtual sustainability conference. So it's the 19th, 20th, and 21st. So to register for any of those, you can go to the links on the slide or go to our event calendar. That's on our main web page, and the link is also on our web page footer at the bottom of each web page. To receive notifications for upcoming webinars and conferences, you can go to our Ohio EPA Resource Hub. You can create an account, then go to the option Subscribe to Updates, then select the subscription option named All Trainings, Webinars, and Conferences. You go to the link on the slide. The Resource Hub is also at the bottom footer of each web page. And if you miss past webinars, you can go to DEFA's webpage at the link on the slide. If you go to the left menu, you can click on the word training and you'll find recordings of the training you may have missed. You can also go to our agency YouTube channel to view recorded webinars. We'll post a recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. It usually posts within a week of the webinar. And we'll post a PDF copy of the PowerPoint slides with the recording. The YouTube channel link can also be found at the bottom of each of our web pages on the footer, and it's next to the Twitter icon on the bottom right side. With that, we'll end today's webinar. Again, thank you for joining us and have a great day.